Welcome, everybody. We are so glad to have you here. We have a lot of people register for this very important topic today. My name is Tara Mastel. I work for Montana State University Extension. I work in the Community Vitality Program, Community Development. And we work on helping rural communities remain vital. We do the Reimagining Rural Program, Big Sky, Big Leadership. And we are so happy to partner with Kaya Peterson at NeighborWorks Montana to help everybody in rural places learn more about housing and kind of what's the first step and how to get started. And we're just really excited to have a lot of folks here today. I just want to say that we are recording this session, and I will send out, and if anybody has any particular resources or anything, we'll send that out hopefully later today. So with that, we're glad to have you. So this is the third in our series. The first one that we had and the recording, I'll put that in the link. The recording you can find on our website. The first webinar we had was where to start, kind of where to get started. And we had examples of two communities that got started with, they had no housing expertise, but they came together and they connected with experts in a more regional area to get them started. So that was a pretty great start to our session. And Kaya, do you want to introduce yourself and talk about the second webinar that we had?
Yes, hello everyone. Thanks for joining us again, or the first time. Great to see you all. So the second webinar that we hosted was about improving aging housing stock and maintaining supply. So we looked at a preservation map available through the state to see where affordable housing has already been built. We had an example project from Belt and Cascade, supported by NeighborWorks Great Falls. We talked about cooperative investment or investment cooperatives in rural areas, and folks from Baker joined us to talk about what they're working on there. And then we had a little bit of conversation about some other home rehab and home preservation models. So that was the second session. And then Terry, you want me to just roll into setups for today? Okay, great.
Awesome.
So today our topic is developing new homes and increasing supply. We have a wonderful group of panelists and presenters with us today, developers, a tribal housing authority, and an economic development organization with great perspective on what it takes to develop new homes in rural areas. We wanted to frame this a little bit to say this was a topic that many of you on the call have asked for over and over again, recognizing that we need to preserve what we have and we have a supply need. We need different kinds of housing. We need more housing to support our rural communities, both in terms of lower income folks, retirees, people who are new to the workforce, and then also supporting our workforce in general. So this is a topic you'll have asked for. It is a very hard topic to navigate. There are no easy answers, and I think that's a theme you've heard from the last two webinars, but our goal here is to give you some ideas of what's working and ways to get started. I think this one, maybe more than the others, you're going to hear also some of the harsh realities, because we don't want you all to go down a path that is going to lead to a dead end. And so just want to sort of frame up that while there are some avenues to explore, it's not going to be just find a developer and they're gonna build a subdivision in your community. That's an unlikely path for most of your communities. So we want to give you some tangible approaches and just sort of temper the expectations here. There's no perfect way to do this, and you'll hear some of that from the panelists, but also hopefully hear some good ideas of where to start. So we are going to start with a conversation with Beki Brandborg and Jean Leuwer, who are developers who've been working in Montana a long time and have done a lot of really great smaller projects in rural areas, and have a real heart for this work. So Beki and Jean, let me pass it to you. And just to set up for the rest, from there, we're going to talk with Jody Perez from Salish Kootenai Housing Authority, and then we'll follow through with some other conversations. So Beki and Jean, thanks for joining us. Go ahead and introduce yourselves and
Thank you,
Share
Kaya.
with us your
Thank you.
experience.
I'm Beki Brandborg. Jean and I are private developers based in Helena. Jean has 25 years of experience doing this. And he's done many projects in small towns. And this subject is tough, but we are hoping that you will be inspired to keep your nose to the grindstone and be able to take positive steps towards building new homes in your communities. That's why we're doing this today. And that's why we do it. That's why we do it for a living. So Jean, tell them a little bit about your background, please.
Sure. Thanks, Becky. For many years, more than I want to try to remember, I was the executive director of Rocky Mountain Development Council in Helena. So I've got about 35, 40 years of experience with a nonprofit. One of the things we did at the nonprofit was affordable housing development in Lewis and Clark, Jefferson, and Broadwater counties. I've been gone from there 10, 11, 12 years. And to keep myself occupied, I've continued as a private developer doing low-income housing tax credit projects primarily in various places in Montana.
We are, Jean and I are partners in our work. And Jean has done projects literally all over the state, big cities, small towns. And one of the ones we thought would be a great illustration is a project we did called Cottonwood Villas in Deer Lodge. Deer Lodge has a population of 2,900 people. It's in Powell County where the state prison is, and the whole county has 6,800 people. And this apartment complex is all one level, designed. It's 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms, right, Jean? A couple 3 bedrooms, or just
Yep.
2?
Yep.
Yeah, 3s. And there's 21 apartments altogether. They turned out really cute. Between the two of us, we couldn't find a single photo. Sorry, we couldn't do that. But Jean, how did it come about that you chose Deer Lodge, and what were some of the early steps? And we should point out too that all our projects have been funded by low-income housing tax credits from the Board of Housing. So that's our income stream, in addition to others that Jean is adept at maneuvering and gaining support from. But how did that start, Jean?
Well, the Board of Housing has a competitive process, and it's a board that's attached to the Montana Department of Commerce. Most of the resources for affordable housing, and there are income limits that apply to the folks that have to live there, and there are rent limits that apply to the projects based on the area median income of the counties. So but Department of Commerce, Board of Housing, or Community Development Division are just great resources for money that's available. One of the things that developers do is make judgments about what communities or what projects might be competitive or attractive to the Board of Housing members. There's 7 members on that board. They're appointed by the governor. They'll typically have 15 to 20 projects a year to choose from. In today's environment, they've got enough money to fund about 4 projects. So it's really a year. Yeah. So it's really competitive. And as we looked around the state, there had been a lot of discussion, and this was probably 4 or 5 years ago, just about needs for housing in Deer Lodge, primarily for the folks that work at the Department of Corrections penitentiary. And it occurred to us that that aspect, along with some others, kind of general capacity of the community, there hadn't been a project done there in many years, might make that competitive or attractive for the Board of Housing. The other kind of a little bit of an aside was I think the project we finished right before that might have been in Wolf Point. So to us, Deer Lodge looked pretty close, you know.
An hour away versus 8 hours away.
But
So then
Go
talk
ahead.
about, Gene, if you would, the partnerships we as developers always have almost in every community, whether it's a city, an economic development authority, organization, or an HRDC, a human resources development council. Talk about how you thought that through.
Yeah, well, each community is a little different in terms of what resources they have. Almost any community in Montana will tell you they need more affordable housing, workforce housing for folks that are critical to their communities. Teachers, healthcare workers, law enforcement folks, city employees, county employees. In the funding that's necessary, one of the things that the Board of Housing looks at in terms of competitiveness for project is what's the community support for the project. So it takes some time to develop relationships with folks in the community, whether those are nonprofit organizations, as Beki said, HRDCs or economic development councils, whether it's city and county government. But upfront, we spend a lot of time talking to folks to get a sense of what the community needs, to let the community get to know us a little bit and check out whether or not they want to work with us. And
they do. Each one of these entities definitely ends up truly participating, not only in showing their support, but sometimes being the recipient of some of the funds. And so literally what Gene said about getting to know these people, developing relationships. I went to Deer Lodge 15 times and I got to know as many people as I could to garner that support and assess that interest and assess the need. And that's what laid the groundwork for being able to submit an application for the low-income housing tax credits. And that got the ball rolling. And then we submitted our application and were successful. Do you want to talk about how the city exactly participated? Would that be helpful?
Yeah, in Deer Lodge, the city had agreed to be a grantee for home funds, which were required to make the project financially feasible. So, we received an allocation of tax credits. The city put in a grant application for home money that supported the construction of the project. And the city or county have a lot of regulatory requirements and responsibilities. So, if they're working with you, if you're working with them, they can make sure the project's of a quality that they expect in the community, that they want in the community. So it's part of it's technical in terms of grant recipients, part of it's just good community relations and dealing with credible folks, assuring them you're going to do a good job and letting them get to know you.
So these projects are funded by low-income housing tax credits granted by this Board of Housing group of 7 people. And that's an annual process, and it's not easy the first time you look at it. I remember reading what's called the QAP, the Qualified Allocation Plan, 10 times, trying to understand the jargon and the abbreviations and the instructions, because that's what it is. This Qualified Allocation Plan is the instructions for submitting an application with all the deadlines attached to them. And it's not impossible to learn. It's also something you can do in partnership with your city, people, your extension agents, your economic development authorities, and your HRDCs. And we have a list that Kaya's got of all the economic development authorities. There's no group of people in the state who write more grant applications than these ladies you're going to hear from in a little bit. And also, to get your, I'm just going to show you something. Yeah, like Beki walks away from the camera. So here's the qualified allocation plan that is the instructions, and it's 60 pages long. But like I did, you can read it 20 times and you'll get it. And it's not rocket science, and it actually has gotten simpler in the recent years. It's gotten more straightforward and understandable.
So let me just interrupt for a second. So there's a map of the economic development organizations. I just flashed on the screen. I'm sure you all memorized it and know exactly who to work with now. So we will distribute that to everyone afterwards. And I just want to highlight a couple of the key things that I think Beki and Jean are pointing to. So I know not everyone on the call is going to pursue a tax credit project in your community. But there are some of these key themes I think that are relevant for working with any developer on any kind of project, right? So Jean and Beki, you've both said you were looking for a community where there was a clear need that you could identify. You were looking for a place where there were some partners on the ground who had community knowledge and who had some willingness to put in some time and energy with you to support a project, to identify a community need. And then I know there are some questions about tax credits, and we will come back to that, but I really want to start at this level of really what's relevant to any community. So you've talked about HRDCs, you've talked about local officials. Beki, I think you were also saying you went to like Elks Club or Chamber of Commerce. Talk about some of those other, think about these very small rural communities where they maybe don't have city staff. They don't have an HRDC
so
on site.
I went to the Elks clubs, the Lions clubs, the arts groups, the Chamber of Commerce, any organization I could find out about, and I went to a lot of them had luncheons, and so I went to those over and over and over to let them get to know me, to build credibility for Gene's history, because he has a ton more that I'm just an appendage, and again, see if they were interested, see if they thought the need was there, see if they would help, see if they'd write letters of support, see if they would testify to the Board of Housing. And it worked. I mean, they were very jazzed and excited and helpful. We only have a couple minutes left. One direction I wanted to point you to is a seminar coming up held by the Department of Commerce about some of those funding streams. We can't, Jean and I build houses, build apartment complexes, all income restricted, no normal commercial kinds of apartments. And we do it with these sources of funds. And this seminar that's going to be, I think, March 7th, hosted by the Department of Commerce, and Kaya will put that in the chat, is just a wonderful way to open the door and start learning about these programs. And it's something also a whole team of people can do. You're not going to be able to rely on one person. One key message I want you to know is just keep at it. It does take time. And talk to a million people and see if they might be interested. Jean suggested when we were talking about this to call Bruce Brensdell at the Department of Commerce Board of Housing staff. Call the Board of Housing staff and say, who are developers who do projects in my part of the state? Who do you recommend who would consider a project in my town? And they'll make recommendations. I mean, they can't say, oh, this is the best one. They'll just say, here are some choices. And every time you talk to anybody in this whole realm, you're going to learn something valuable about how to get the funding for your town. Right, Jean?
Yeah. And as Beki held up the QAP, don't kill yourself trying to learn all the details about tax credits, home money, housing trust fund money. Go to people that have some experience. The Board of Housing can make recommendations, or they can help you over a lot of these hurdles, because it takes a whole team of folks to do these things. I mean, I've been doing them a long time, and I've got 10 people in a team that I depend on for different parts of it. There's little changes that occur all the time. So ask the folks at the Board of Housing. The other thing that each of these projects has in them is some private financing from a bank, you know, a construction loan and permanent debt. So, you know your community, you're going to need a piece of land. You're going to need it preferably to be able to be hooked into city services with water and sewer. But talk to people that are experienced who can make referrals for you to head you toward other people that have knowledge. So you don't spend 5 years beating your head in the wall trying to get through.
You're not,
complicated.
no, you know, there's only 30 people in the state who know how to do this from start to finish. And they all have these teams of people. And we don't recommend that you become an expert, like Gene said, on the QAP. You're gonna connect with a developer who already knows it. It's good for you to kind of understand, but you're gonna end up, right, Gene, with a developer partner.
Well, if you use tax credits, but
yeah, if you use tax
home money, housing trust fund money, community development block grant funds, it's your local government, it's your economic development agencies, it's your Department of Commerce can steer you toward folks that have experience in all of those. So
we're kind of
Beki, one other thing I think. Oh, it's a lot of feedback. You had a couple other things that I thought might be interesting for the group. So one was how you identified the land parcel. And then another would be to hear a little bit more about who ended up living in that property. Can you talk about those two things?
You bet. In Deer Lodge, as we looked around the community, again, with the help of the city, you know, the city had some parcels of land that they were willing to sell. They had some challenges in terms of access to water and sewer and what it would cost to get water and sewer into them, and a little bit of a local flood issue. There was a privately owned subdivision that had been platted years earlier, and was owned by, you know, probably the biggest employer in the community and one of the primary businesses in the community. And, you know, as we looked at 3 or 4 different options of land contiguous to town and the subdivision, we ended up coming back and we ended up buying 4 or 5 lots in the subdivision and kind of amending the plat a little bit to make it work for the project. The
people who live there.
Yeah, the people that live there, you know, out of 21 folks, my guess is, as Beki went around the community, one of the things she heard really consistently from all the community groups was, we've got a lot of senior citizens, a lot of them ladies, who have lived in their own houses for 30 and 40 years. They don't want to have to maintain those houses. And the short answer is, we probably ended up with, out of 21 units, 8 or 10 seniors from town moving into 1-bedroom apartments. They ended up selling houses they were in and freeing those up for other folks that might not quite income qualify for ours, or younger families that needed a different sort of a spot. So we ended up with some folks who were teachers' aides, who were entry-level folks at the Department of Corrections. We ended up with, you know, service workers in the community.
Yeah, the hospital is a block away, and we have health aides of various kinds. Single moms, quite a few single moms. So, yep.
Yeah, so what I love about that is, you know, sometimes we identify a community housing need and we think, oh, we got to hit that straight on, right? We need homes for entry-level home ownership. So we got to build homes for entry-level home ownership. But there's a housing spectrum here. And in our communities, that it might be that by building apartments, we're sort of addressing a part of that spectrum that's freeing up homes for other needs. So this is this is a market and a community that there are a lot of different ways to approach that. But I think your Deer Lodge example is so helpful in thinking that way
Yeah,
about
the
community needs.
the
and how to
ripple
respond.
effect, the ripple
Mhm.
effect of building additional housing. Yep, it's real positive.
Yeah. So any kind of, we hope you'll stay on, and we
We will.
may, if we have time towards the end, be able to
Yeah,
dig in a little
you
bit more to the tax
Thank you.
credit conversation, but any other kind of final thoughts before we move to Jody?
Just keep at it, make friends, rely on other people. Rely on other people. Help, ask for help. Ask for help.
Yeah. I mean, your desires are real common across the state. And the State Board of Housing folks at Department of Commerce, the community development folks at the Department of Commerce are very knowledgeable and really want to help. They'll provide you information. They'll provide you good guidance.
Yeah, everybody wants to help. Everybody wants to help.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both so much. If you could both mute, and I'm just going to kind of transition us here, but just to say, you can see Beki and Jean's expertise and experience, and like I said at the beginning, their heart for working in rural communities. And it's just, they're a real inspiration and a force in this work in the state. So good people for you to know. There were some questions, most, as Beki and Jean said, the work that they do really is income targeted and income restricted, but hopefully you're hearing some themes that can be relevant, whether you're working with those programs or not. The other thing I just want to sort of clarify or highlight, a lot of people ask, well, you're talking about low income housing, but I want to talk about workforce housing. There's a spectrum there. And when you hear the folks who are living in the communities and the properties that Jean and Beki are building, they're in the workforce. So there's a sort of a false dichotomy here, or a false separation of like, what is low income housing? What is workforce housing? Oftentimes we're seeing a mix of folks in these properties. And again, you're hearing that overall housing spectrum. When we're building one type, we're also impacting the other. Jean, did you want to say one more thing about that?
Well, you're right, Kaya. Most of these folks in tax credit projects are employed in the community in relatively low paying jobs. When people hear low income housing, they think of the old HUD projects. And this is very different in terms of the residents and the payment requirements. These folks have to pay rent. There's not a rent subsidy that goes with it. So they're employed, or they've got a source of income. And it really is workforce housing. I wish it went up a little higher to serve a little broader range of folks, but it's different than what a lot of people perceive when they hear low income housing. Some similarities, some differences.
Yes, thanks, Jean. Okay, great. So that's one example. And then Jody, so excited to hear from you. You are doing such an incredible array of work at the Salish Kootenai Housing Authority, and love to hear some of the examples of what's working in your community.
Thank you, Kaya. So I have been in my position for almost 4 years, executive director for the Tribal Housing Authority, and we have 500 low rent units that we manage and maintain with an annual block grant from HUD. And everyone has been trying to funnel any housing needs through us, but we are only meeting part of the spectrum. Like Kaya mentioned several times, the housing spectrum. So we have a need for permanent supportive housing. We have a need for elder housing, for workforce housing, for sober living, for people with disabilities. We have autistic children they are now adults who need homes, and there's nowhere for them to go. There's a whole spectrum of housing, and then there's the low income rent that we provide, and then there's a need for affordable home ownership, and we do have a program that tries to help subsidize mortgages, and then just regular market rentals and market housing opportunities. So there's this huge spectrum of need, and I have only been able to meet a very small fraction of that need. And so I put together a Flathead Housing Coalition to conduct a survey of the Flathead Indian Reservation housing needs. We haven't got the report yet, and it was not received as well as I would have hoped. Our response rate was just about 62 or 63%. And so there's going to be, some room for error on what the numbers are, but it will give us an idea of what the housing needs are. And we just launched on Monday a doubled up survey, because homelessness on our reservation looks different than it does in the cities, because we house our homeless people. They couch surf, they stay with aunties and grandmas and sisters and wherever. So it looks different on our reservation. And so we're going to use that information to hopefully do a homeless shelter. Right now we have a warming center that we just opened up for people to stay just in the evenings during this winter. These winter months. And so we're trying to diversify to meet all the gaps that are so evident in our housing inventory. And I'm going to be building 9 units. Well, there'll be homes for our low rent tenants who are financially stable, and we are going to subsidize their mortgages. And so we are doing the full construction according to their needs. They'll be customized homes, and then they will be purchased from us at a subsidized mortgage. And those will help 9 people move into home ownership, and then low rent tenants can fill in those spots. So it's helping essentially 18 families get into appropriate housing. And we're using our IHBG ARPA funds for that project. We are almost done constructing 5 units for low rent, and they're just 2-bedroom, 1-bath standalone homes for our regular low rent inventory. And we are using our Indian Housing Block Grant competitive grant for that one. And we just received a notice that we were awarded another competitive grant, and we're going to be building 20 duplexes in 5 communities across the reservation. Yes, so we're excited about that. And then with our ICDBG, Indian Community Development Block Grant, ARPA funds, it will be for, I think that one is for 6 1-bedroom low rent units for our regular inventory. And we're going to be repurposing some trailer lots that we had set aside for trailers. They were unused. So we're going to be building on those. And then the Indian Community Development Block Grant, the regular competitive grant, we were also successful with that application. And so it's going to be a total of 13. So one grant's covering 6 and one is 7. And so we'll have 13 1-bedrooms at this trailer lot. And we just used part of our IHBG ARPA funds to purchase a home that is right next to one of our struggling communities. It has a bad reputation for criminal and drug-related activity. And so we're putting a youth center there. So that will have a direct impact on the children in that community. And that community, it's nicknamed the Dirty 30s because the project number was 30s. So the units are 3001, 3002, 3003. And so I want to name that youth center something that's very significant, and it will rebrand that community. So we will start naming, using that word for the youth center on that community. So it will have hopefully a new identity, a rebirth of that community. And I just yesterday submitted a grant application in partnering with our tribe to build a permanent supportive housing complex for families. And I was hoping for 30 units, but we only have enough money for 20. And I will be setting aside some of my tenant-based assistance rentals. There are vouchers. They're like Section 8, but for my Indian Housing Block Grant. So they will be my tenants, but they will be the services, the wraparound services will be provided by the tribe's departments because they are the professionals with those services. I only know property management. So we're partnering with that. Hopefully we will know this summer if our application was successful, but it's kind of a follow-up to a project that we put together with the tribes CARES funding to address homelessness. We did permanent supportive housing, and the Tribal Defender's Office they stepped up as the lead service provider. So their clients who are in the court system and they were homeless, they now have permanent supportive housing, and they are my tenants, but they're the service providers. And so it was only for individuals because there are restrictions on the clients if they are registered sex or violent offenders who could stay there. So it's for single occupancy. So we see the need for families. And so that's what we're doing right now, is applying for families. So yeah, we have a ton of projects going on, and more in the hopper that hopefully we can get.
Jody, it's such an incredible amount of work that you all are taking on. And I love hearing about the range of, like you were saying, all these different gaps that you're trying to fill and the different community needs that you're trying to meet. And one of the things that hopefully everyone is hearing is Jody and the Housing Authority's expertise at not only developing housing, but connecting that housing to services and other community support. So public defenders, youth. So I feel like just want to highlight, Jody, you and your team are such masters at that. And I think sometimes we think about just building the housing, but that's just one piece, right? We're trying to build communities that are supportive. We're recognizing that housing is just one piece of the pie. I think for this audience, one of the things people are really interested in is, how are you getting this work done? Who is actually building these? How are you getting, with all of that work happening? I know you have some different ways that you are able to support it, but talk about that a little bit. How do you get the work done in a rural community?
So we're fortunate. So we have a tribal lands department, and the tribe owns properties that we can lease. And so that helps with a lot of that, that cost for the land. And then we do infrastructure. And one of my dreams is that I will partner with the other municipalities on our reservation to do developments in, so the city of Polson. Say they want to do a project and they want to apply for home funding. And then I would bring in my ICDBG block grant funding, and then we would have a project that we do together. And so that it's for, the entire community. It's not a tribal housing. It's not a city housing. It's a blended, it's a mixed, it's a partnership. And so I have all that going on. I've been so busy since COVID hit. It's been this amazing, beautiful burden blessing because all of these grant opportunities, we've never seen this kind of funding I don't think in the history of housing. I don't think anyone got this kind of relief funding from anywhere. And so I've been trying to use the tribe's funding towards home housing projects and funding that I'm available to apply for towards it too. We have a phenomenal grant writer who grew up on our reservation, and her mom was enrolled here. So she always sets aside an application time for us. So without her, we would be really hard off. We wouldn't be as competitive. And then we have, when we also did that permanent supportive project for the Defender's Office, we purchased 7 manufactured homes, and I had my procurement control specialist. He ran our warehouse. I asked him, can you please help me? I need help getting all of these set up. And he was like, yep, what do you need? And so he really stepped up. And then because he did so phenomenal in there, I was like, I need help with development. I have too much on my plate. He said, what do you need? And so we changed him. We created a position for construction coordinator and promoted him into that position. And so first, he tried to find someone to do our environmental reviews that are required before we can spend any funding. And there was nothing. We couldn't find anybody. So he learned how to do it. And he did our environmental reviews. And, he will do whatever needs to be done. And I think that's like the key of getting any job done, is finding the workhorses that are willing to take on that responsibility. And I've been a workhorse. nights and weekends. I kind of feel burnt out 5 times over since COVID hit. And some of my staff, they are workhorses too. I call some of them unicorns because they don't really exist anywhere else. But yeah, so I guess having good people who can help with those heavy lifts, that has been instrumental. And then partnering with the tribe, and then I've been trying to build up my partnerships with the other municipalities on our reservation. Our reservation looks a little bit different than other reservations in Montana. We are the minority, and we are not, we're pretty siloed between the cities and the tribe. And so I'm really trying to build those bridges so that we can combine resources to have the best, most impactful projects that are possible. And I mean, we're heading in the right direction for sure.
Yeah, I love that. Just you're growing your own, right? There's a need, you ask for help, people say yes, and they figure it out, right?
Yeah.
That's a pretty great approach. What about folks who are actually have experience in the trades and doing the building side of the work? Are you doing that in-house, or are you hiring that out? How does that work?
We hire out. So Nolan Michelle, he's my unicorn that was hired from the warehouse. So he's the construction coordinator, and he will do RFPs for the architect and engineering firm. And then the architect and engineering firm will help with the design, and then they put the bid package together for the construction, and then we'll bid out the construction. And then so for right now, we have those 5 2-bedrooms that are almost complete. That is a tribally owned, and also it's a woman-owned tribal member who, her and her husband are the ones who are building those homes. And so that's very cool. There are Indian preference. We follow the Indian preference ordinance, which means we give preference to our tribal members who are doing, that are business owners. And so that project's done. The ones, so for architect and engineering, we used Marcus Valentine. I think it's called Architects West, out of Idaho, I want to say. And so he comes over and he goes over everything with them. And then we just got into a contract with Grant Creek Construction to do the infrastructure for our 9 homes for homeownership. And that architect and engineering firm he's Doug Pepmeyer out of Kalispell. I can't remember which company he works for, but he did all of that work. And so Nolan's coordinating it all, and then we're contracting everything out.
That's great. Yeah, I think that is a good example, I think, too, that sometimes we think that, oh, people aren't going to be interested in our project, but these organizations in Kalispell, Missoula, Idaho, if you have a project and you're saying, here's what we need support with, people are out there who have that expertise and may be willing to do that work. So Jody, we just have maybe one more minute with you before we want to keep rolling, but definitely hope you stay on. And if folks have questions for Jody, please do put those in the chat. Any sort of encouragement or advice, Jody, that you would offer to small rural communities, volunteer-based or local folks who are just trying to figure out where to start with?
So what I've been doing is asking for help. Kaya and Hannah have been phenomenal partners as far as home ownership side of stuff. We are kind of lacking in that program right now in housing. We have we have one new person and one who doesn't have one vacant position. But without Kaya and Hannah, we would not have the program that we have. They are a phenomenal partner. I think I saw Ray Brown on the attendees list and Maria Hirsch. They are part of the Flathead Housing Coalition. So I think one of maybe my talents is to find the people who know what you need. And I think that's one of the biggest things is to figuring it out. Like, so right now, just from you guys talking, I wrote down housing trust fund money, home buy, or Montana Board of Housing, LIHTC, community development block grant. All of those are options that I need to help my municipalities tap into. so that we can partner, because maybe they don't know those funds are available. And I am not fully aware of outside of the reservation. I'm kind of siloed in my tribal housing. So I really want to tap into other resources. I know continuum of care funding would be good for homelessness project. And I don't know how to tap into that, but the Montana Healthcare Foundation is trying to help me learn how to do that. And so, you know, just reaching out and finding, I think if there's a will, there's a way. And that I just try to utilize the resources that I have.
Wonderful. So inspiring, and just, again, an incredible amount of work that you and your team are doing there. So thanks for sharing all that. Please stay on. We'll definitely make some time for more question and answer as we move forward. So next we want to turn to a little bit of perspective on a for-profit developer in a small community. And Kara, I'm going to pass it over to you for this.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to comment on what Jody was saying. So with my work, working with rural communities, and then kind of trying to also create a conversation about rural community vitality with statewide resources, that's the hard part that the statewide folks have, is connecting in with rural communities. So hopefully we can make some impact there, but also I guess I would just emphasize what Jody was saying is like reach out. And a lot of times they're just looking for a way to get into rural communities and make a connection and offer some help there. Yes, okay, so we tried really hard to find a private sector builder. We had one, but they were not able to make it today. So I interviewed this person, and I just want to share a little bit about what they said. And I wonder, I mean, it was just it's just really hard to, it's a challenging situation. So I talked to this builder. They are from out of state. They typically they are a developer, and they do projects in larger communities. They do subdivisions, like homes in subdivisions, whole subdivisions. They do apartment complexes. I mean, this is the kind of developer that a lot of us in rural places imagine that, well, we can just have them come to our community and develop the same thing they do in other places. But listening to the situation from the builder's perspective, it really is, there's some challenges. And so I hope to share that, and I hope that some of our panelists might be able to chime in on some of these points as well. So this developer took on a project in my area. I live in the Red Lodge area, and they came here because they had a connection to the area, but they also had a connection with a local builder. So they had, they're more the developer, and they had this connection with this builder. And I asked about what are the challenges in building in a rural community, and they said, number one, contractor availability is just such a challenge, because as a larger developer, you rely on subcontractors to make things happen. Another challenge is just the sheer distance. Like we talked about, like, what if you're going to develop something in, Northeast Montana or Eastern Montana? They're like, just the distance to Billings or to a larger community for supplies, for equipment, for whatever. It's just such it's an unknown. And when you have unknowns, when you're running a business for profit, when you have unknowns, that just means that you have to jack the price up, because all of us on this a lot of us are, it's a passion project for us, but for a developer, it's their business, it's their family legacy, it's, they got to make money. And so when you have unknowns as far as costs, you have to raise the price. Talking more about building in a small town, the setting, just getting the challenges and getting what you need. So subcontractors, you got to have electrical, you got to have plumbing and HVAC. And if you don't have those folks, those are the key trades for making something happen. It's really hard. And also just the labor, just somebody to actually do the construction piece of it. Access to material supplies. So just this builder was just talking about just the sheer travel time, even just being an hour from Billings is a burden and something that they're not used to dealing with. They're used to just having all of those things right there. Small towns don't even have a lumber store or hardware store, so that makes it even more challenging. You have to plan on just materials. And again, those challenges mean more uncertainty and then requirement to higher costs. So, so I was just asking, what about, like, what should we do? What is the answer? And this person said, well, maybe the best bet is just having a local contractor, and that local contractor would be maybe doing most of the work themselves. But again, the challenge that this person sees is that having that, I mean, that local contractor, if they have those basic skills, they could go to a larger community and make 6 figures just right out of the gate. So they have to have some kind of tie-in connection, but they also have to have a reliable source of projects coming forward. So, you know, they're not going to be able to make it if they just build a house 1 year and then in 2 more years they have another house to build. They need to have, because again, that contractor is a business owner. So I asked if, you know, the main thing that this developer was talking about is he just couldn't get past the cost, the sheer cost. So they could do it, but the cost is going to be just astronomical because of all these unknowns and the challenges that we talked about earlier. So, so anyways, I guess I wonder if that's part of the reason why they weren't able to make it, because it's not a fun story to tell. You know, you don't want to come and say, well, you want to be positive. And I think that it's really a hard situation. So, but I will say, in my work with rural communities, I feel like that there is, where there's challenge, you get creative, and people love our rural communities. So I think where there's a will, there's a way. But we just wanted to include this perspective from a private developer. So I'm wondering if any of the panelists have any thoughts on what I shared from this person that I spoke with.
No, I think you're exactly right, Tara. The costs in rural communities, the transportation, the lack of immediate geographic availability is tough. It drives costs up. And it's, you know, particularly in the last couple of years, the labor market, the availability of materials has been tough no matter where you're doing projects, big cities, small towns, anywhere. So,
yeah.
You know, your affordable housing isn't cheap. You know, it costs a lot of money to build a unit. And when you build them, you want to build good units. So it's
Gene, tell them what some average costs are per apartment.
I think in a 30-unit apartment now, the Board of Housing's QAP allows up to $320,000 a unit. And
that's tough to accomplish in today's world. It's very tough. You have to be very careful.
Yeah, and you know, that sounds really expensive, and it's a lot of money. But by the time you know, out of that, probably I don't know, 2/3, 70% of that is construction. You've got land costs, you've got regulatory requirements. In these deals, you've got attorneys, you've got accountants, you've got you know, you've got a lot of overhead, architects, engineers. I mean, that's when you add it all up, that's what it costs.
Yes. Let's see. It looked like Tori had something to say, and then Tori, then Jody.
Oh, just basically what Gene had just said was, you know, it's just all of the distance. Be prepared for delays because of that. I know when we were building with Gene, even the weather, people don't think about it out here, but because we have not had construction at a massive scale, other than maybe like a modular here or there, builders didn't take into consideration some of the weather issues because nobody's built anything here for 30 years. So literally the wind was a problem. And so just be prepared for those things, be flexible. and be patient, I guess.
Thank you, Tori. And Tori is in Wolf Point, so northeastern Montana. Okay, Jody, do you have a comment?
I was just going to share, so the application that I just submitted for the 20 apartments, it was $10 million. And the architect engineering said it was a 67% inflation is what he accounted for. And so it equaled $246 per square foot.
Yeah.
And that is for living and, open common areas as well. So I couldn't believe what the cost was. And I hope we get bids that are much better than that, but it's better to plan safely instead of, shorting ourselves in the end. And for our five 2-bedrooms that we're building right now, it's $217,000 per unit. So that's over $1 million for those 5 homes. So we're getting a much better deal if you add it all up to have 20 units versus only 5. But yeah, it's very expensive right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm concerned about time because we want to have Brianna and Tori comment, but Kaya, this is a great question that we haven't really talked about yet. The prefabricated buildings as a way to reduce the number of, ease the situation with stick-built construction.
Yeah, so let's maybe, Tori and Brianna, is there anything else you would want to share from your experience about just developing in rural areas? And then I think we could address this question next. Oh, you're muted.
Reservation. Oh, sorry. We come from Eastern Montana. We are located on the reservation, so we have a lot of reservation communities we work with, but we also work off the reservation. And we just, I think the biggest thing in the very beginning is to get your ducks in a row, get your core group of people in your community, work with start calling people, ask questions, find out where the resources are locally. If you have an economic development entity, maybe reach out to them. If you have an HRDC, reach out to them. There's no ABC, here are the steps, but if you can get that core support from your community, that's a good place to start. Then the next thing is educating too. You need to educate your neighbors, your community leaders. That means city and county. Some cities in our region absolutely do not want low-income housing. They will not even consider it. We even have one community in our region that doesn't want multifamily housing. So not even the condos or duplexes. So understanding the nature of your community and what the needs are. We did a housing study. Those are great places to start those conversations. You literally drive around every neighborhood and see what's available. Out here, despite all the land that we have, there's so much land, right? You can't develop on most of it. Like you can develop on this much of it. So literally in some places. So, making sure that you're aware of what the infrastructure is. A lot of our infrastructure is so outdated. Even if there is a lot to infill, there might not be the infrastructure. It's probably crumbling. So just be prepared for some of those early maybe challenges. But then also, I think it's very rewarding when you do finally get something completed, right? We've been fortunate because we have so many resources. We tapped into our brownfields program for infill, right? We had some apartment complexes that were dilapidated. We were able to use our brownfields and help with the demolition costs. And now we can look at putting a new unit on there. We have a lot of collaboration in our small communities. So one I know of right now is IHS, the local hospital, tribal health, and health prevention, disease prevention. Received donated land from the tribes that has infrastructure. And so they're able to put in new units for their providers that are coming in from out of the area. So just be creative, be as absolutely creative as you can. Mini houses, we've looked at, what are the possibility of bringing in the small homes. During the Bakken, we had a lot of modular trailer or smaller homes that we were able to, some teachers just were started because those were easy and inexpensive. So just be willing to think outside the box, but then also try to drag your community along with you. Our small communities don't like change. So despite them yelling they want housing, you're always going to have that education component and really trying to get people to see the big picture. So get as many friends as you can along the journey.
And you will live to tell about it,
Yes.
believe it or not. We've been through it. We developed with Jean and Beki, and
Just a minute.
got co-captain here helping out.
Let me see if I
But
can help you.
even
Okay.
once construction is complete and you'll have challenges that arise, we put together a 28-unit apartment building under Jean and Becky's direction here in Wolf Point, and it's been 5 years, and we're still educating the community on who lives there, who's qualified to live there. So that's what I have to say. You will live to tell about it.
That is good encouragement. You'll live to tell the tale, and it'll be incredibly rewarding once that project is complete. Anything else, Tori? No? Okay. I think it is a natural next question, right? What about modular? What about prefab? What about manufactured? So let's talk about that a little bit. Beki, you said you've looked at it, but not a good fit yet.
I've made some contacts, and it's some of the companies. I haven't done enough research. I would love to do more research, and I'm inspired by this question to do just that. It makes total sense if we could cut down on the initial cost. Now, Gene will tell you that because of the infrastructure needed and all the components, that it may not be a cost savings, but we need to study it in detail to find that out. And I have reached out to a couple of companies who weren't quite ready to talk about delivering 3 dozen. You know, they'll talk about one and put you on a waiting list for 2025. But I want to talk about 3 dozen in 2025 on some trucks getting, put up. But
Make
so
it
I'll
happen,
keep looking,
yeah.
and if people have suggestions of companies that they've seen that are real, look solid, I'd sure talk to them.
Gene, anything to add on that?
No, I think it's worth looking at, and it, in some locations and in some, each project is really unique. I can't say that enough.
Yep.
I've done projects in a community of 900 people. I'm doing one in Billings, Montana, so they just all have their different advantages and challenges. And the industry is changing quickly. So what didn't work 20 years ago or a year ago may well work next year or this year. So don't say no to anything.
That's right.
Look at what's out there. And I think at a point, I think that prefabricated stuff will make a lot of sense. I've not quite seen it work yet, but on a large scale, but I'm wide open to changing my mind on that, because some smart guy is going to figure out how to do it,
Yeah, that's a great perspective. Jody, I know you've worked with manufactured housing there. Anything you would add?
Yeah, so my first thought is always that it has a less lifespan than stick built, and I can build less than the cost of purchasing, manufacturing, sending it here, putting in all the infrastructure, and installing it. So the cost savings always makes more sense for me to go stick built, but I am on a steering committee for a feasibility study for my tribe. So the Tribal Economic Development Department is looking at partnering with it's called Foothold out of Butte. And they are manufacturing, and they want to franchise and have an office at our reservation. We have a forestry department, so we could, use our own lumber. That would hopefully cut down some of the costs, but the cost per square foot is higher than stick built. So I'm not 100% on board, but what I need to factor in to really sell it to myself is that we will be developing all of the trades that are necessary that go into building those homes. We'll be investing in our future for our future trades programs and our, we are going to need plumbers, electricians, all of those are going to have to be built up in our current workforce. And so I really need to think about the long-term sustainability and capacity building for our reservation. So if you talk square foot costs, I'm not on board, but once you look at the overall impact for what it could do for our reservation, for housing and jobs and building our trades, I don't know why I'm so reluctant, but right now I'm just trying to get over that square foot. And there's also this other company called Living Lodge, and they do round homes, and they are a nonprofit tribal company that I really want to put some of those on our reservation, and their cost is like $60 per square foot or something. It's very affordable, just a fraction of the price, but it's hard to get over the round concept when we're so westernized of a square home. So, and that they're, more energy efficient and culturally relevant. So I want to dabble into that also, that Living Lodge.
That's great. Yeah, one other model that I would mention as maybe for interest for folks is called Mi Casita. It's out of Brownsville. And I know they've been having some conversations with a couple tribal communities in Montana, but their model really built out of a disaster preparedness and response approach where they needed to move really quickly to get simple units on the ground in their community after hurricanes, after flooding. And then from there, it's really developed into having a modular approach where you can build a simple unit that can then be added onto as a family grows or as a community's or individuals' needs change. So that's called Mi Casita. We're preparing for our statewide housing conference coming up in May 15th through 17th in Helena. And that's one of the models that we're hoping we can bring to the conference and share more with people. So put those dates on your calendar, and hope you can join us and we can continue to explore these. But I think what you're hearing here, and this has been my experience too, is I love what you said, Jean. It just totally depends on the project. And Beki, what you're saying, like it's always a great thing to take a look at. And then Jody again, kind of similarly saying, it depends, and we're fine. People are trying to get creative, but there's no silver bullet. There's no easy model there either. So Tara, I don't know. Go ahead. Oh, go ahead, Jean.
But stay at it. Every project's got its problems. I met Tori and Brianna because they'd had, they got partway through a 28 unit project, had some funding in place, and it kind of fell apart before the shovel ever hit the ground, but they had a ton of work done. They had some money in place. It took us, 3 years, guys, once we started again, but we got a brand new 28 unit project built, and it'll work in Wolf Point for the next 50 years, I think, so there's successes out there, it's stay at it.
Thanks, Jean. So Tara, are there other questions you think we should try to answer? If anyone has additional questions you want to drop in the chat.
Well, I think it's interesting, some of the comments that we have in the chat. We have, a couple of really great experiential comments from some folks about some of the costs of the modular, like Marcella is in Red Lodge, and they did a workforce housing project with a prefab home, and the costs ended up being higher. And Steve Zachman, I believe, he's from Baker, same situation. So I guess but I think the wisdom of the panel here is saying, well, evaluate each situation regardless. I put in the chat, we have an evaluation, a questionnaire. I think it's 5 questions. One of the last questions is, what do you want to learn about next? And I would just encourage you all to fill that out for us. And we have a list of topics from the other webinars and from comments of what to bring in for our last webinar of the series. It's at the end of February. But fill that out and let us know what you're interested in, and we will find speakers to address those issues that are of interest to you. So I'll put that in.
Yeah, and we'll follow up with some of the resources we discussed today, including the webinar that Beki mentioned. I didn't find the link yet, Beki, so we'll find that and get that out via email. You heard from everybody on the panel the cost, and I think that's why you hear everybody talking about grants and funding sources. It's not just about serving the needs of very low-income people. It's about bridging the gap between what's affordable in a community and what the true costs are. So just encourage folks to think about that as one area to explore and start to get educated on. I think, yeah, we're looking forward to that next webinar. And like Tara said, we'll be using your feedback to inform what that is. We left that as a, what do people want to hear about next? We had this series of how to get started, talking about preservation, talking about new development. There's a lot of different directions we could go with that next session.
So I'll just add, we're doing another webinar series for another project that I'm involved with, and we are focusing on, so I work on rural community vitality. So everybody has an idea of a building downtown that isn't working. They want to put something in there. So we are addressing that exact issue at this another webinar. I mean, I know some people don't like them, but it's a great way to get information out. And I put that in the link, but I'll post it again. If you want to go hang out for that one, we have Jason Seiler from the Montana Department of Environmental Quality, and he's does the brownfields program. So you'll get lots of good information from that about what do you do with the brownfield piece and what money is available, but also like, what's your first step? Because like renovating, like in Roundup, they had their old school, the central school that was decommissioned, but it was still a viable building. So they are renovating that building into apartments and houses. And again, I don't think it's super cheap, but there are other sources of funding. So that's kind of something to think about too.
Great.
Okay.
Should we thank our panelists, Sarah? I think we're ready to close out. Okay, well, Brianna, Tori, Jean, Beki, Jody, thank you so much for sharing your experience and wealth of knowledge and encouragement. And thanks everyone for participating. We look forward to seeing you in February.
Thanks a lot, folks.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Watch your email. We'll send you links and everything, recording.